much. Let's bring in former New York City mayor and one of Donald Trump's advisors, Rudy Giuliani. Mayor Giuliani, great to see you this morning.
Nice to see you, Willie.
Let's pick up right there on the charge of the election being rigged. Right. He said SNL was part of it, the media has rigged it, but he's used it in terms of conspiracy, that there's something broader going on working against him here. Senator Jeff Sessions, a sitting United States senator, also saying this week that the process is rigged. I want to be specific about how it's being rigged.
Yeah, I think there's a misunderstanding about that because I think he and Paul Ryan kind of miss each other in the night. Paul Ryan thinks he means the elections at the polling places are rigged. He's not saying that. There may be a few incidents of that. Philadelphia is an example of where you often have cheating, Chicago, but that's not the real problem. What he's really talking about is how 80 to 85% of the media is against him. You look at the New York Times. I read the Times every day. I don't know why. It just aggravates me, but I read it every day. First three stories: Donald Trump was bad in school. Donald Trump had a business failure. Donald Trump did this. Donald Trump did that. The WikiLeaks thing has taken by far a sub-story to these, 8 or 9 women, none of whom have any substantiation for what they say, and 2 of whom have been completely rebutted, and the Times didn't even print that. So I think what he feels is the establishment is against him, and they're rigging the election against him. Not cheating at the polling place, but you got the Times, you got the Washington Post, you've got most of the major newspapers, most of the networks.
He's not, but his supporters aren't necessarily making that distinction, Mr. Mayor. I want to read you something, a Boston Globe piece up over the weekend talking about his supporters at a rally in Ohio. One of the quotes in the piece comes from a supporter, a 50-year-old man. He says, if she's in office, talking about Hillary Clinton, I hope we can start a coup. She should be in prison or shot. That's how I feel about it. We're going to have a revolution and take them out of office. If that's what it takes, there's going to be a lot of bloodshed. So when he talks in broad terms about the election being rigged, something being taken away from him unfairly, his supporters aren't hearing it the way you're describing it.
He always makes it clear that he's talking about the reporters. He even points at them, and he says it's the reporters. They're the ones who have rigged it. It's pretty clear what he means about it. He's never talked about cheating at the polling place. And second, a letter like that, I could give you 20 letters at the Trump headquarters.
That's from a supporter.
From Hillary Clinton's people or from his people that say crazy things. Look, you got millions of people. Each side has a couple of coups.
Will you, Mr. Mayor, approve of and respect the outcome of this election if he loses?
Of course I will. Of course, unless my God, there is really evidence of cheating. But I don't expect the electoral process to be rigged, meaning the election to be rigged. But if it is, we'll contest it. I mean, that has happened. But what I do think is very, very unfair is the media coverage of the election, in which anything said about Donald Trump goes right to the front. You stay on it for 5 days, stay on it for 6 days. And Hillary Clinton says horrible things about Catholics, evangelicals. She says, I said one thing in private.
Mr. Mayor, we've covered all those. Respectfully, Hallie Jackson just did an entire segment on the WikiLeaks. We've covered them on this show.
Not with the same intensity.
And by the way, the WikiLeaks emails are available to the public. Anybody can read them.
But people don't unless it's pushed on them. And if you look at the New York Times, he's up here, she's down here.
You said just a minute ago of the 9 women who have come forward and charged and accused Mr. Trump of touching them or kissing them in ways that she didn't give permission.
The ninth one I'm not really aware of.
Have you read the accounts from these women? Did you read, for example, the first-hand account of the People magazine writer?
I'm not his lawyer in the case, but I have seen the rebuttal.
So did you read the accounts from the women?
Is that the woman on the plane?
The woman on the plane is one of them. She was the first one in the New York Times.
There's a witness who says it's not true.
Okay. Well, you're a prosecutor. Would you take the witness who said 30 years ago, whatever it was on the plane, a guy who says he remembers because he has a, quote, photographic memory? Would that be sufficient for you as a prosecutor to say, yes, I take his story over hers?
Well, it's one-on-one, and she also said that she was able to lift the armrest. And in those days, the armrest in first class didn't lift. It's also rather bizarre that you could do that for 15 minutes. 15 minutes is a long time in first class. You know what first class is like. And in those days, first class was even more filled with flight attendants. The allegation on its face strains credulity.
But you're asking, one thing we should point out, the head of the airline at that time said actually the armrest did go up and down. I can't believe we're talking about the specifics of 1970s armrests, but he said they did go up and down. But do you find any of these stories compelling as you've listened to them? Because what you're saying is there are 9 women, and I don't believe any of them.
I find that they all fit a pattern, and I find that they all come 27 days before an election. And I know how the Clintons conduct an election. And they conduct an election about as dirty as it gets. And I find it impossible that people remember 30 years ago and 20 years ago and 8 years and come forward now, right at the very end, to push these things.
Mr. Mayor, what incentive would 9 women have to come forward to expose one of the worst moments of their lives to the public?
At least one is represented by Gloria Allred, so we know what her incentive is. It's to get money. That's what Gloria Allred does all the time.
But you think the women are coming forward for money and for fame?
Well, we know. Well, you also should have put on the relative of the woman who says this woman had said wonderful things about Donald Trump, what a wonderful family man he is, what a terrific guy he is, how terrific he is. And then she wouldn't come to his restaurant, and she turned on him completely.
So bottom line, you don't believe any of the 9 accounts that we've
I know
heard this
Donald
week.
Trump for 28 years. I've been in almost every situation with him you can imagine. Played golf with him, gone to dinner with him, gone to ball games with him. I've never seen Donald Trump act toward women other than as a gentleman.
So all 9,
including my wife and my daughters, and in fact, he's courtly in the way he acts toward women. So I find these hard to believe. Does he talk like a guy sometimes when you're hanging around and you tell jokes and stuff like that? Sure. But does he act like a gentleman? Absolutely.
So all 9 of these women are lying?
I don't know. I don't know if they're lying. I trust Donald. I don't know them. So how would I know? I trust him. He's my friend. He told me they're not true. I've never seen anything in his conduct, and I know them a lot longer than he does, for 28 years, that suggests even a slight little inkling of this. And I think that the circumstance of it, 27 days before an election, when she is getting bombarded by WikiLeaks, and she needs something to save her, because the stuff she says in those emails is disqualifying for being president of the United States. There's a public Hillary and a private Hillary. How about she doesn't know that the C on a confidential document means confidential? She should have been Secretary of State if she knew that. Hillary Clinton couldn't pass a background check to get a government job because she was extremely careless in the handling of classified information. And she's trying to bury all that. She's trying to get all of you to concentrate on all these women. So we bury the fact that here's a woman trying to be president, but I couldn't hire her as an assistant U.S. attorney.
So what you're suggesting, Mr. Mayor, is that these women have been directed by the Clinton campaign, that they've been put forward by the Clinton campaign through the media to tell their stories, to hurt Donald Trump, and they haven't come on their own to these stories.
I am saying one thing. I have been a trial lawyer for a good deal of my life and an investigator. I don't believe in coincidences. 27 days before an election, people are talking about things that happened 30 years ago, one of which sounds totally absurd. You could do that on an airplane 30 years ago for 15 minutes without somebody saying something or doing something. A lot of the rest of them absurd. The woman whose relative rebuts what she says. There are others, by the way, who rebut some of these claims. And second, being in a maybe a little bit different position than most people, knowing the man and knowing what he's like. He is very, very courtly and gentlemanly toward women.
But you know, people who make these claims don't come forward to get rich and to get famous. These are difficult things for them to say publicly. What would be the incentive of the women to come forward?
As a prosecutor, I have found that you got to apply about a 50-50 test to this. This whole idea that Hillary Clinton has that every victim should be believed, which of course she doesn't apply in the case of the victims of her husband's rape, sexual molestation, taking advantage of an intern. She elected not to believe those victims. But the idea that every victim should be believed, that's nonsense.
But let's flip that around. Why do you believe those victims of Bill Clinton and not the victims of Donald Trump?
I don't necessarily believe them and not believe them. The point about that is she went and attacked them. And she's a feminist. Hillary Clinton is on record saying women should be believed, almost no matter what they say. All of a sudden, women come along and say, Bill Clinton raped me, Bill Clinton molested me, Bill Clinton took advantage of me as an intern, and she goes and attacks them. That means she is what she says in the WikiLeaks. She's a phony. That was the attack. It wasn't about Bill Clinton's morality or whether he did it or didn't do it. I don't agree with Hillary Clinton. I don't agree that every victim should be believed. I had a lot of victims that didn't tell the truth when I was a prosecutor.
How do you make that distinction between which should be believed and which shouldn't?
You look for corroboration. Does she have corroboration? Does he have corroboration?
Well, many of these victims do. They have contemporaneous.
That's not corroboration. Corroboration are eyewitnesses, people who remember it. Anybody can say anything to anybody. People can say that's all. Actually, that's all hearsay. That's not even admissible in a trial.
Okay. I appreciate your time. We've gone long. I know you have to get going. Thank you very much.
And I really wish that Chris Wallace spent 3 minutes on Hillary's stuff, 3 minutes on Donald's stuff, and all the rest of it on taxes, ISIS, and the real issues. Because, you know, Hillary's past and Donald's past isn't going to be what affects us next year when our taxes go up or our taxes go down.
We will see in the debate this week. Mr. Mayor, thank you for your time this morning. I appreciate it.
Hello, Today fans. Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking that button down there and click on any of the videos over here. to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives.